Hey, Shalom, Akim, Shalom, Kal Halal, Yahweh, Hashem, Yahweh Shah, Hashem, Rakah, Dash. Send double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to y'all came out there pushing the word, sincerity, and truth. This is Brother Ariala. And I was just doing a kind of like a study session, and we were talking about Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter. Ended up talking briefly about temple harlotry or sacred part prostitution. And I just wanted to kind of just go over it. I felt like it was a lesson that people know about, but I remember going through Conan the Barbarian actually as a good visual of how that went down. And so sometimes those kind of like that ancient way of being is kind of lost in our minds, and so having a visual kind of brings it home for us. And so I just wanted to touch on that real briefly, and kind of go into it when we read here in the book of Deuteronomy, the 23rd chapter and the 17th verse. In the 17th verse, it says, "There shall be no whore or daughters of Israel, nor sodomite of the sons of Israel." All right. And so when you look up that word whore and you go into that word, the word is Hadash, and it means female temple prostitute. Because this was a function of the ancient world where people will use the sex act as a way to conjure up energy and spirits and lure people actually to be in the temple and devote themselves amongst all those idol sacrifices. And so, when we go into the book of Second Maccabees, the 6th chapter, these altars to Olympus and to Jupiter were set up within the temple, and we see where we read about the harlots filling the temple. And so I just wanted to touch on that real quick. You can go to Second Maccabees chapter 6 verse 1. It says, "Not long after this the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of the Most High, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympus, and that in Garizim of Jupiter, the defender of the strangers, as they did desire that dwelt in the place. The coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, for the temple was filled with riot and reveling by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots, and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that brought in things that were not lawful." All right, so it says, "For the temple was filled with riot and revelings by the Gentile, who dallied with harlots, and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places." And this is where you see the introduction of the Greekish fashion of the temple harlots, all right? Temple prostitutes. And if you don't understand this backdrop, when you go into the New Testament, when you start reading in Corinthians, where it's 8, it says, "Now it's touching things offered unto idols." That whole mindset, you have to understand that it was hundreds of years of these practices going on that had infiltrated all that region. And when men would come into the ports and with their merchandise, the first thing that they would see was these harlots in these temples and these places where you could come and relax, so to speak, and people and men would get caught up into these places, right, and drawn in. I'm gonna read a little bit more, and then I want to go and get an example, and bring everything full circle. Back into Second Maccabees 6 and 4, it says, "For the temple was filled with riot and revelings by the Gentiles, who dallied with harlots, and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that brought in things that were not lawful. The altar was filled with profane things, which the law forbiddeth. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or an ancient fast, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. And the day of the king's birth every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the fast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy." So he was carrying ivy, all probably manners of different carved things or whatever. It says, moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of the sacrifices. And whoso would not conform themselves to the manner of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. All right. And so whenever you read this, and those Jews that conformed themselves to the manner of Gentiles, for those who were fighting, and as you read here in the book of Maccabees, there were Israelites that did not conform, and they preserved the way of Israel. But for those who sold out or sold themselves out to, keep themselves from being killed, they were seen as Gentiles. And so when we go into the New Testament, this is where you see the distinction between Jew and Greek, those who conformed to the way of the Gentiles and those who had not. Okay, it didn't have anything to do in the New Testament with all the Gentiles coming in. All right, so this is a real point of contention. But here we want to highlight sacred prostitution. And, I'm here in Wikipedia. It says sacred prostitution, temple prostitution, cult prostitution, and religious prostitution in general terms for a rite consisting of paid intercourse performed in the context of religious worship, possibly as a form of fertility rite or divine marriage, right? Scholars prefer the term sacred sex or sacred sexual rites in cases where payment or services is not involved. The historicity of literal sacred prostitution, particularly in some places and periods, is a controversial topic within the academic world. Mainstream historiography has traditionally considered it a probable reality based on the abundance of ancient sources and chroniclers detailing its practices, although it has proved harder to differentiate between true prostitution and sacred sex without remuneration. All right, so I want to skip down to where it was talking about in the Hebrew Bible. It says Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible uses two different words for prostitute, zona, all right, and kadash, all right, or kadasha. The word zona simply means an ordinary prostitute or loose woman, but the kadasha literally means set apart from the Shemitic root kadash, meaning holy, right? Consecrated or set apart. Nevertheless, Zonah and Kadashah are not interchangeable terms. The former occurs 93 times in the Bible, whereas the latter is only used in 3 places, conveying different connotations. This double meaning has led to the belief that Kadashah were not ordinary prostitutes, but sacred harlots who worked out of fertility temples. However, the lack of solid evidence has indicated that the word might refer to prostitutes who offered their services in the vicinity of temples, where they could attract a larger number of clients. The term might have originated as consecrated maidens employed in Canaanite and Phoenician temples, which became synonymous with harlotry for biblical writers. All right, but we understand that the connotation was separated for a reason. All right, it was separated for a reason. All right, it says in any case, the translation of sacred prostitute has continued, however, because it explains how the word can mean such desperate concepts as sacred and prostitute. Okay, let's see. Let's go down. It says in the book of Ezekiel, Aholah and Aholibah appeared as allegorical brides of the Most High, whom represented Samaria and Jerusalem, which became prostitutes in Egypt and gave in prostitution from their youth, blah, 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 blah. All right. Let's see. Is there any other meat on this that I can read off of? It says that the law of Moses was not universally observed in Hebrew culture under the rule of King David's dynasty, as recorded in Kings. In fact, Judah had lost the book of the law during the reign of King Josiah. That's really kind of goes over the point of what I'm reading about. Let's read this. It says, ancient Greek and Hellenistic world. In ancient Greece, sacred prostitution was known in the city of Corinth, where the temple of Aphrodite employed a significant number of female servants during classical antiquity. The Greek term Herodulus or Herodul has sometimes been taken to mean sacred holy woman, but it is more likely to refer to a former slave free from slavery in order to be dedicated to a god. In the temple of Apollo at Bula Regna, a woman was found buried with an inscription reading, "Adulteress, prostitute, seize me, because I fled from Bula Regia." I'll say it like that. It has been speculated she might be a woman forced into sacred prostitution as punishment for adultery. In the Greek influence Hellenistic world, in the Greek influence and colonized world, sacred prostitution was known in Cyprus, all right, Sicily, and in the kingdom of Pontus, 8th century BC, and in Cappadocia. 2nd Maccabees 6:4-5 describes sacred prostitution in the Hebrew temple under the reign of the Hellenistic ruler Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Okay, so these things were going on. These things were extremely prevalent. All right, and there's a differentiation when you read in the scriptures between just a woman who was just a streetwalker and kind of that was her occupation, working as a whore, and these sacred prostitutes who were dedicated in temples for idols. Okay, and it's something to basically note whenever you trying to or whenever we're understanding the scripture. And one good way of seeing that is here. I want to play this clip of Conan the Barbarian because it does give a good visual of, how these sacred temples were. So I'm going to play this real quick, okay? And for you younger brothers, man, this is one of my favorite kind of movies back in the day. Conan, he had a series of movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is before the Terminator days, Now, as you can see, they're in the temple, and basically you see men and women. They're all temple harlots, men and women, or what would be considered sodomites, man. All this stuff has gone down, and this stuff goes all the way back to Sumeria, even before the Greek culture or whatever. So this is one way. That's why fertility is so big in idol worship. You see Baphomet and all these different things, and even the issue with Nimrod, and you see phallic symbols in the Christmas tree and all these type of things, because the sex act was something that was utilized greatly to conjure up, the energy of these idols. There's a cauldron, and it's full of abominable things. A pot full of abominable things where they get ready to do the sacrifices. You see it looks like she's eating a toe or something, and it's, these are the same things kind of mentioned in the scriptures when you go back to Isaiah 65. And 2, it says, "I have spread my hands all the day unto a rebellious people, which walketh in a way that was not good after their own thoughts, a people that provoketh me to anger continually to my face. They sacrificeth in gardens, and burneth incense upon altars of brick, which remain among the graves, and lodge in the monuments, which eat swine's flesh, and broth of abominable things is in their vessels, which say, Stand by thyself, come not near me, for I am holier than thou. These are a smoke in my nose, a fire that burneth all the day. But as we see, that's that broth of abominable things.
So this is paradise.
You see, oh boy, he getting seduced by it.
Princess.
And just how they going in this temple and they get ready to basically to slay all these people in this temple. That's what the righteous men of our nation would do, man. Whenever these altars and these in the temple would get defiled with all manner of idol worship and these wicked rituals, we had to go up in there and kill all the wicked priests and get them up out of there and purge it out of the land. Because, you come and do this within the temple is ridiculously defiled with blood and all manner of wickedness, man. And so, like, the one good example is Jehu. I was kind of just reading on this. I'll start at the top just for the sake of it. Why not? 2 Kings 10 and 18 says, And Jehu gathered all the people together and said unto them, Ahab served by all a little, but Jehu shall serve him much. Now therefore call unto me all the prophets of Baal, all his servants, and all his priests, let none be wanting, for I have a great sacrifice to do to Baal. Whosoever shall be wanting, he shall not live. But Jehu did it in subtlety, to the intent that he might destroy the worshipers of Baal. So he's actually making them think that he really wants to worship Baal so he can gather everybody together. And so verse 20 says, And Jehu said, Proclaim a solemn assembly for Baal, and they proclaimed it. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshipers of Baal came. And so there was not a man left that came not. And they came into the house of Baal, and the house of Baal was full from one end to another. And he said unto him that was over the vestry, Bring forth vestments of all the worshipers of Baal. And he brought them forth vestments. And Jehu went, and Jehonadab, the son of Rechab, into the house of Baal, and said unto the worshippers of Baal, Search and look that there be here with you none of the servants of the Lord, but the worshippers of Baal only. And then he went to offer the sacrifices and burnt offerings. Jehu appointed 80 men without, and said, If any of the men who I have brought into your hands escape, he that letteth him go, his life shall be for them, be for the life of him. So he said, man, if y'all let anybody get through here, it's on you. I want all of them gone. Right? So Jehu, he's like, we gonna run up in there. All right, and it says, and it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, that Jehu said to the guard and to the captains, Go in and slay them. Let none come forth. And they smote them with the edge of the sword, and the guard and the captains cast them out and went to the city of the house of Baal. And they brought forth the images out of the house of Baal and burnt them. And they break down the image of Baal and break down the house of Baal and made it a drop house unto this day. And Jehu destroyed Baal out of Israel. And so a good way of kind of seeing that is when Conan and them, they ran up in here wanting to save this princess from this wicked sacrifice. And y'all saw my man James Earl Jones turned himself into a python. You know, this is just a good image of just imagine the captains and the guards running up in the temple, killing everybody. Just how Jehu had captains and the guards running through the temple of Baal. So, you know, in Israel, none of the women that was up in there would be spared. None of the men, everybody, nothing would be spared. The cattle, nothing. Everything will have to be killed and burnt and removed out of the land of Israel because it's defiled by idols. You know what I'm saying? And so, but this is just to give an example of, you know, the sacred prostitution or temple prostitution and how it went down. This is a good image of how that stuff went down that enticed men from all across the world to come into these places and start to worship these different demons. You know what I'm saying? So I just wanted to touch in on that, man. If you guys can type it in and look it up if you want to and go in even more. And, you know, the scripture says, suffer not a witch to live, and necromancers and all those type of manner of people. But yeah, man, I just wanted to touch on that, man. Double honors once again to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutations to y'all. I'm out there pushing the word sincerity and truth. Shalom.